I can speak both Chinese and English, okay? Hello, 大家好，这是追梦雅各布 Jacob。今天我请到了我的太太，太太 means wife， 她叫我叫她金姐，所以说今天有一些事情，想去请问她，了解她问一些问题。然后金姐她之前也在 BYU 上的学 ，You studied at BYU before, right? And both BYU and BYU-Idaho， 所以说她有更多的这样的一些经验，有关 BYU 的经验和 BYU-Idaho 的经验。所以说我准备了3个问题，今天问金姐。I prepared 3 questions for you. Let's hold hands. So the first question is, so tell me your experience about BYU-Idaho first.
I guess BYU-Idaho, compared to BYU, I started at BYU-Idaho and then went to BYU. It feels much more relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
The campus is substantially smaller, so it's a lot faster to get to places.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess is a plus, but everything, just like BYU, everything's built on a hill. The classes were challenging, but weren't like super rigorous.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it accommodated a lot of different study types. The teachers were a lot more approachable, at least in the classes that I was taking. I took mostly pre-nursing classes, and so when there were those more challenging classes, I felt like I always had access to a deeper explanation if I needed to go and review something, instead of having to go through like a TA. It was more you and the teacher instead of you and the teacher and a TA, but you were primarily working with the TAs.
Is it because it's a smaller school?
Probably, but they still, with the 3-track system, I feel like there's always an influx of students.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is a smaller school, but it doesn't necessarily feel like a smaller school. All of the classes, BYU and BYU-Idaho, unless I was in like a legitimate like general class,
Mm-hmm.
More my religion classes and things like of that nature, were when I was in like the huge lecture halls. But most of my classes, there weren't a huge size of class difference. Yeah. One thing that I really missed at BYU-Idaho was the dancing culture. I loved dancing at BYU-Idaho. They did on-campus dances multiple times a week. Wednesday was always country night. Friday was always ballroom and Latin. And so there's substantially limited like events going on because it's
at BYU?
At BYU-Idaho.
Oh.
It's a smaller town, so the town has less going on.
Okay.
And so like the on-campus life was really like the activities that the students had access to, especially if you didn't have a car. I never had a car at BYU-Idaho.
I didn't have a car for a long time too.
Most of my roommates never had a car, and so we were really kind of limited to the activities going around on campus. But the school also knows that most people at Idaho don't have cars, and so I feel like they really do a good job of having activities on campus, and a lot of them are a couple of dollars are free, and so that was really nice, especially being, you know, a poor college student. I wasn't working in Idaho. The job atmosphere is a lot harder to get a job on.
Less opportunities, less spots.
Less spots on campus for jobs, less spots throughout the town for jobs, and so that was a lot harder if you needed to find work at BYU-Idaho versus BYU. When you're at BYU, there's always flyers, hey, this building's hiring, this department's looking for somebody. But I liked the activities on campus. I was really able to feel like I got more involved with the student population in Idaho versus BYU. At BYU, I was working and doing pre-nursing stuff the whole time. And so I didn't have a very good student life work.
Well, because you were older, right? And then you also have bills to pay, school, and you're sort of you get. I mean, you know, you're working, right? And then you make money. So
yeah, I was working, but the class dynamics and rigor were a lot.
That's true. People are so focused on school.
Yeah, a lot more focused on the curriculum at BYU. It's a lot more rigorous. The professors at BYU, I feel like, expect substantially more from their students. Most of my teachers were still very approachable, other than like my statistics class.
I love stats.
Most of that, I'm a science person. I know you use math and science, but I'm a science person. Put me in chemistry, and I'm so much better
I'm
than
a numbers
get
person.
me out of stats.
That's why you love me? Because I'm good with numbers.
You can do that part. But the expectations are a lot higher at BYU. There's a lot less hand-holding, a lot less coddling at BYU than BYU-Idaho. Not that the professors just let the students slack at BYU-Idaho. They still expect, it's still a accredited school, they still have very good degrees. Their focuses, I feel like, are just substantially different.
People's focus on BYU feels like a lot of them are thinking about the next education, the higher education, but BYU-Idaho is more like a preparation for work, right? And a lot of the students I know, if they're ambitious, they want to go to, just like you, right? And they study at BYU-Idaho first and then jump to BYU and then to focus on the next stage of life.
I always wanted to go to BYU. I enjoyed my time at BYU-Idaho. The main reason that I switched schools was because of the nursing program. They had a nursing program. They have a nursing program at BYU-Idaho, but when I started in 2013, it was still an RN to BSN program. So you had to apply to get to the RN, you had to then reapply to get into the BSN.
What is BSN?
Bachelor's of Science in Nursing, which is what most hospitals and things look for education-wise in the nursing field now, or higher. The program had kind of fallen behind the standard of what most other schools were doing. Most schools, you apply, you get into the nursing program, you graduate with your BSN. It wasn't a two-step application process, and so by the time I was ready to apply, the school was updating it so that it was more universally BSN, a straight BSN program, but they also made it more hybrid. BYU-Idaho, to accommodate more students, I mean, they are already doing the 3-track system, but they also offer substantially more online classes.
That's right.
And so they were making their nursing program a hybrid class. And so that means a lot of it was online, a lot of it was still in person, but I personally do better in an in-person class, and
on the other hand, do better on the online. Because I can always pause and learn, you know.
And I like to talk through things, and so having an in-person professor just worked better for me, and so I decided at that point because they completely shut down their nursing program other than the people that were finishing their program. They weren't accepting new students yet. And so by the time they reopened their nursing program and had redone their entire format, I had already been accepted to BYU.
Got it.
And so that was the major reason of why I switched. BYU-Idaho still has a lot of the like agricultural degrees, the animal science degrees, which BYU completely
got rid of.
Yeah, they sent all of that to BYU-Idaho. So just like other colleges don't have every single degree type, that's one reason why some people might choose BYU-Idaho over Provo.
I guess you already answered, both BYU and BYU-Idaho, your experience. And I guess you also answered, like, why do you like BYU, right? And it's kind of like, why do you like BYU?
I liked BYU because I felt like it was more rigorous. I felt like I was being pushed harder for growth. I didn't feel like I was just kind of a step above high school. I took a lot of hard classes. I pushed myself in high school, and so I definitely felt the difference between high school and college going to BYU-Idaho. But like I said, there's just a higher caliber of expectation at BYU versus BYU-Idaho. Not that that's a bad thing against Idaho. It works for a different level of student. But I personally liked the competitive nature. I don't feel like is the right word, but just that extra push that the professors expected at BYU, I appreciated, because I felt like I really had to make sure that I was understanding things at a deeper level.
Okay, so, but I studied English first, right? I studied in the language school. So now we're talking to many students, English as their second language. Do you think BYU at the beginning maybe just a bit too much for the language preparation for the language to get familiar with the English? And I know they have an English school, but do you think it's easier for them start from either language school or BYU-Idaho so they kind of used to that? Also maintain their good GPA, maybe a semester or two later, they usually like a year, right? After a year, and it's cheaper too, right? The tuition is cheaper, and they, and they can transfer to BYU. And do you think that would be a better idea?
Yeah, both schools, because of the church and missionary service throughout the world, there's so many people that speak different languages on both campuses, and there's international students all over on both campuses with people that are new to English. I do feel like starting at BYU-Idaho, the language barrier of just grasping the new language, and I would feel the same way if I was going to a different college in
China or Taiwan or somewhere speak a Mandarin area.
That I was still relatively new to the language, and they have accommodations for people with that are new to the English language, and so that's beneficial at both schools. And so I feel like it's really a case-by-case basis. If you feel like you've grasped the language, if you feel like Idaho is a little bit cheaper, most of the classes transfer, not all of them unfortunately transfer, but most of the core classes, the
religion classes.
Well, the religion, but
general classes.
Generals, thank you. Most of the generals transfer, and one of the nice things, I didn't see it as much at BYU-Idaho as BYU. BYU has a lot of the generals and expected classes that can count as two. So a lit can also count as an English credit for those generals that are required, and so I would always look for those that double counted.
Well, it's still two birds.
Right. There's a lot of good at BYU Idaho. The classes are shorter to be going over the same amount of material, so that's one thing to consider, like course load. And again, it also depends on the major. I feel like I took pretty rigorous classes, and so both still had challenges. Just for a comparison's sake, if I had a language barrier, I feel like it would help to start at BYU Idaho and then at least get through the generals and then transfer. A lot of the time they want you to have at least 2 to 3 semesters under your belt before you go and look at transferring.
So I forgot to mention at BYU they also have general study. They also have like English 101 for international students. They have some sort of a English class only for international students. Like it's easier for English 101 or literature or whatever. So I would say, like, if they can get into BYU, just say, hey, don't say, hey, I don't want to go to BYU and I go to BYU Idaho. But BYU is the destination, right? But how to get there from either BYU Idaho or language school or even Ensign College, right? And there's a lot of people went to Ensign College before that was called the Salt Lake College or something, and then they transferred to BYU. I have a couple friends that did that, and it's much cheaper. It's just much cheaper.
I know quite a few people that, especially if you haven't done like an ACT, SAT major test, they've started with the BYU Pathway program.
That's true.
And so that helps them kind of get their foot into the expectation of college life, college expectation. And so you're able to start kind of doing some of those generals, show the schools that I have the capability of doing this because I
one thing with the Pathway program is it's online. It's 100% online. So for a lot of international students, it's easier to come in person to practice English versus online, because when they're offline, they don't speak English, especially they're not English language area. But I think that's a good information in there. Thank you, Kim. And one more question I want to ask you. This kind of changed topic a little bit. As an American girl, right? And then you go on dates at BYU, and then we all know. And I actually told people on the channel talk about BYU, their dating culture and everything. As an American girl, like when you go on dates with the boys, what kind of quality do you like to see the boy, and before you said it, yes, the second time or the third time, right? It's not just like the first time you may be nice, but what kind of quality you're looking for the guys have?
Work ethic, initiative, morals, like strong character. They're honest. They care about what they're doing. They don't slack off. They don't have a problem with pornography. Was a huge one for me.
Which is like the church is not allowed that, because that's in the ecclesiastical endorsement. So you're not supposed to do that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole chastity thing. It's a self-control thing. For me, is and it's a sign of respect. If you can't respect certain aspects of a relationship, that was a huge red flag. I loved it when the guy could dance, because I'm a dancer.
I'm surely not a dancer.
But
she's a very good dancer. I've seen it. The first time I saw her, actually, she was dancing. I was like, oh wow, this girl is beautiful, and she's tall too. I was like, damn, she's tall and beautiful, and she's my type. But anyway,
they had goals. They family was a priority to them. I would kind of jump into those deeper conversations. I didn't waste time just feeling things through. I tried to get people to know people I guess, faster than most probably would with some of those deeper conversations.
Does he have to know the movies?
If they're well versed in movie quotes, that is a
like your level?
I mean, they don't have to, but
Yeah.
some things would go over people's
surely
heads because I talk in movie quotes.
Yeah, you surely crossed that over.
It wasn't the biggest priority, obviously, but
Yeah.
it was, I don't know, similar interests.
Does English ever a problem to you? Like if someone does not speak very fluent English, does that prevent you to go on dates with that person?
I just didn't have that type of experience.
Yeah, you don't have that experience. Nobody really come to ask you, well, except me, but I speak proper English.
I mean, I know enough people that have been international just because I've lived a lot of different places that have had a lot of either foreign exchange students or a lot of immigrants. I mean, I grew up in areas that had in DC for a while when I was little, and so we had people from all over the world that went to my schools, and so it was never like something that was shocking if people had an accent or were learning the language. It was just part of who they were, and so that was never really like a turn off away from people. It just was different.
But you do you do like to know there's part of the story too, right? I mean, if there's opportunity or in general, most of the girls from BYU or BYU-Idaho, they're not just like, oh, you're not from the US, now I'm not going to go on dates with you.
Yeah.
Actually, in fact, it's on the opposite, right? It's more like, oh, you're from other part of the world. I'd love to know to hear your story, right? Maybe go on one date, or maybe go on multiple dates. Because I've seen people like international marriages everywhere at BYU and BYU-Idaho, and I think they also make very beautiful babies.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the benefits, I guess, of one, being an international church, and two, having such a high missionary service-minded, understanding different culture aspect of it's not just closed off. America's the only place. There's other places in the world, and so a lot of people at BYU, because of that missionary either background or understanding in culture, it's not like looked down on.
So it's interesting you said that, because one time I visited UCLA in Los Angeles. I mean, it's a beautiful campus and it's a very prestigious school. Man, I've seen like 70%. Like I see Asians everywhere. Like walk on the street. Like I barely see Caucasians. I see Asians, and I don't remember. I see maybe some Hispanic people. But when I come to BYU and BYU-Idaho, like you literally see like Caucasian majority. But on the other hand, you still see a lot of international students from all over the country, like all over the world. Like I see so many Africans, right? And from their accent, you can hear it. Like I see some people like from some like just East Europe somewhere. Like you just never see them.
I knew people from Pakistan, from Turkey, from Russia, from France, from all over Africa, from all over South America. Like my best friend was half Korean, half American. Like the group that like I hung out with, we had people from Hawaii and from the Polynesian area, from Mexico, who were African American. Like people were people.
Yeah, we just hang out. We're children of God.
Yeah.
But thank you for your time, my love, Kim. And okay, so let's do this. I want to, just in front of the audience, I want to teach you words. Now we can, hopefully I can teach you more Chinese words, and then eventually that you can be good with the Chinese, and we can say this in Chinese. I think I want to see it, and my parents want to see it. I'm pretty sure the audience want to see that too. So let's learn something. You know how to say thank you, right?
Mm-hmm.
How to say it?
谢谢。
谢谢. Hello. 你好. Maybe we can say, you know how to say I love you too, right? 我爱你. Would you say that one more time? 我爱你. 我爱你. Maybe we can learn cell phone today.
Okay.
So cell phone in Chinese words, it's very direct. So cell phone, so it's like a phone, but we say like when you hold a cell phone, it's like you hold a hand phone, right? So hand we call 手. Hand, this is literally 手. 手, we have two hands, right? 手. 机 is machine. 机. And it's a hand, machine is cell phone. So 手机. 手机. 手机 is cell phone. And alright, well, thank you for coming to my the video. Love you.